I agree. And the other deal, which is interesting, there's a report that came out today that Arteta is pushing for Arsenal to make an opening £25 million bid for Yuri Tielemans. That was kind of coupled with the news that came out in the Daily Mail today that Tielemans' preference to join a club involved in next season's Champions League was always the case. But at this stage, none have come forward and shown as much serious interest as Arsenal. Therefore, Arsenal are still very confident of completing this deal. And that very much echoes what the likes of Ben Jacobs has said and Dean Jones that have been on the terrace in the last few weeks, that it's a deal that Arsenal want to get done because you don't want to leave it too long in case a player Liverpool are looking at falls through and they go, actually, look, Yuri's still available. Let's go and see, because that can become a harder thing to compete with. But £25 million bid, Yuri Tielemans in. I mean, I know you're not his biggest fan, but it's still
a good deal for that. For that amount.
Very good.
Yeah. When you look at like the likes of, Tchouameni are going to Real Madrid for 100 million, package deal, 25 million for Premier League proven player, that a year ago, a lot of teams would be like desperate to get him. I think it's a good deal. Obviously, players that are not world-class usually have flaws, and you have to figure out whether or not you're willing to deal with those flaws. And I do think Yuri Tielemans might want to put down the McDonald's, get in the gym, firm up, because he's a little bit on the fluffy side, I would say.
Fluffy.
But yeah, other than that, like, he's a very good technical player. And any Arsenal fan that thinks that he's going to sit on the bench behind Granit Xhaka needs to get their head checked. He walks straight into our team and starts.
Sorry. Let me interject. Arsenal fans think Granit Xhaka is better than Yuri Tielemans.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know what this thing is about Granit Xhaka and like trying to repaint like history or rewrite history around him, but like, he's a good player, but highly limited. Tielemans had a bad season, but the season prior, he helped Leicester win the FA Cup. He was big for that. And they almost made Champions League, and he was one of the biggest pieces of that, like with Vardy and Maddison. So, Leicester have had a better midfield than us for years, with Ndidi and Tielemans and Maddison. And all of a sudden, because Granit Xhaka looks decent standing next to Thomas Partey, things have changed. Nothing has changed. We still need to upgrade upon him. He walks straight into our midfield and starts. And the idea that he wouldn't is just like, what are you smoking? Like, you know what I mean? So I like the player. I like the deal. I like that it's not going to cost that much. I like that he's like 25. So he still has some years ahead of him where he could still get better. And if he pretty much stays the same, he's still an upgrade. So yeah, I like this one. And I like, because he's pretty much our number one target. And I think with that, you have to show players that you really want them just in case other teams are interested. And I think what Arsenal have done with Tielemans and Gabriel Jesus just showed them, like, we know we don't have Champions League, but we want you more than the other clubs, which I think is important.
No, I agree. And I think that, it's wound some Arsenal fans up when journalists have said, well, he's always stated he wants Champions League football. So maybe Arsenal have got to do a bit of rework, a bit of re-convincing, which I don't think was...
Pay some more. Give him some more money?
Well, the journalist never said that. It was more just reaffirm that, yes, we haven't got Champions League, but we are still the best place for you to be, which is kind of normal. When Yuri Tielemans had said publicly, the next team I go to, I want it to be in the Champions League. But sometimes things just fall your way because a lot of the Champions League teams that maybe would come in for him maybe don't need a Yuri Tielemans right now. So it opens up that door and that opportunity. I just think the one thing Arsenal have to do, and it sounds like they are when we look at the reports today, is act quickly and get him in, because there's still question marks over him, whether he's of that Arsenal and above level, that's sort of the elite end of the spectrum.
Now, what do you think?
I like Yuri Tielemans. I don't think he's a bad... I like him. I think he's better than every midfield player that you've got, barring Thomas Partey, but they don't play the same role. He improves your team. I can't wrap my head around Gunners that are still consistently backing Granit Xhaka, who is at least 4 or 5 games a year with red cards or fouls or petulance, he'll cost you games and points. That in itself is not what elite level footballers do. He costs you more games than he individually wins you, which is a problem for someone that some look at as a talisman. Technically on the ball, Yuri Tielemans, in my opinion, is levels above him. There's no doubt. And I think you need to. This was a player that you almost sold for a pittance last year, and it was only because the team that were trying to buy him tried to drive the price even lower that he stayed. The new deal,
Yeah.
I thought at the time was strange. And yes, there were some improvements last year from Arsenal. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't know, some Arsenal fans, I just feel like maybe, I don't know, I'm going to blame their dads and their mums, to be honest. I don't think they've been taught how to support football clubs properly. And the standards are high. It's almost they feel like, oh, I'm going to, even if we have a player that isn't very good, I'm going to stand by him regardless. It doesn't matter what midfielder we're linked to. No one's going to get in front of Mars Xhaka. It's sort of like, it's cute. It's cute, but it's how a 10-year-old would support a football team. It's not how a grown-up would support a football team. Granit Xhaka's a good player, but to sit there and act like, no, Yuri doesn't get in the team over him, it's a disastrous opinion. It really is. It's a disaster. It's an abomination. It's awful. And I think Yuri improves your midfield at £25 million as well. It leaves you with a lot more money. If you think about him and Gabriel Jesus in collectively for sort of 65, 70 million, that's good business because they're the they're the age profile you need, because too many of your better players are babies in the footballing sense. You need players nearing those mid-20s, in those mid-20s, because Tielemans and Gabriel Jesus will be your leaders next year. They will be part of your leadership team instantly because they're just older. They've been there. They've worn the T-shirt. Yes, Yuri Tielemans, he's had European campaigns with Leicester. He's won the FA Cup with Leicester. Of course, he's part of the Belgium national team. He's played at major tournaments. He has like as much experience as anybody else in your team. He's won as much as any individual player has in your team. Yeah, for me, I think it's a very good signing. I think it's a very good signing, and anyone that thinks Xhaka's better than him, honestly, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror, because that's an atrocious opinion, in my view.
Yeah, for sure. Like, of course, I have my question marks around Yuri Tielemans, like in his fitness and stuff like that. But beyond that, he's so technical, and he had a bad year with Leicester. Leicester was terrible, so you have to take that into consideration. But I think he can go up a level. I definitely think he's a Champions League level player. You just have to put him in the right system. Granit's cool, but we need to improve upon him. Two things can be true at the same time, that Granit Xhaka is a good player, but you still need to improve upon him. I think that's kind of where we are. The other player I want to see come in as well, like just a sidebar, is like if we could convince Zinchenko to come, I'd bite your hand off for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans rave about him, especially during the international break when they've been watching him. I've also read as a midfielder. Now, this is my ignorance, and we all learn things. I never really think about him as a midfielder because I've only ever seen him play as a fullback, really. So that's what it shows. He's got that versatility, but obviously, I mean, and again, another Premier League proven, talented football player that could help. That's going to help to improve you. There's just no doubt about that in my mind. I think he really will. Brandon here says Xhaka over Tielemans, this fan base. But this is what it comes down to. Back to that comment that you already mentioned there, and I can't find it again now, saying Terry doesn't know how good Xhaka is. Xhaka is a good player. But Arsenal have got to, let me just answer, sorry. Arsenal have got to move beyond good players. You need to start moving towards your very good, to your exceptional, to your world-class. You are big Arsenal that need to get back to winning Premier League. Even if you're a Gooner that loved last year and thought it was a big improvement, that's stage 1 of 5. You've got to get back to winning the Premier League. Until Arsenal are winning the Premier League, you're failing. I know it sounds harsh, but it's truth.
Well, the one thing that I will say is that if you have to continuously try to convince somebody or people that a player is good, he's probably not that good. Good players, you don't have to convince. It's not a conversation, doesn't get debated as much. You can debate them across other good players, but if you have to show, graphs and numbers and underlying metrics and try to make it seem like everybody's stupid and you're the only person that can understand how he's a good player, he's probably not as good as you think. you know? So again, he's a good player. And yes, like he's like maybe a little bit more physical than Tielemans. But I saw numbers the other day of you know, defensive contributions or like midfielders retaining the ball in midfield. And not last season, but the season prior, Yuri Tielemans was second in that list. You know, he was above Declan Rice in that list. And Xhaka was nowhere to be found. So like Xhaka's not this like defensive freaking dynamo. He's a good player. We just need to improve.
What you'll find, there's two things in that. I've said it before about these, what is it they call themselves? Tacticos or something, right? These data analysts that now watch football. They lack emotional intelligence as human beings, I'm sure of it, because they always factor out the human element of the game. But secondly, most of those gooners that will put those metrics up that will say this is why Xhaka is better than Yuri Tielemans based on all these data points would probably also say that Arsenal have a better team than Leicester overall. Therefore, Xhaka's obviously going to be elevated because he's surrounded by better players. None of it ever makes any sense in real life. And that's why football has never been about data points. You can't make predictions based on data. Part of it is based on data. The rest of it has to be based on your experience in the game, the mental element, and the fact that we have seen so many players, and Jota is a prime example of one, that have gone from a middle-of-the-road team, a mid-table team or a high mid-table team to a top team and looked an outstanding player. Virgil van Dijk, it wasn't even after a year he turned into the player he is now. Van Dijk, when he joined Liverpool, snap, you saw his overall quality come out because he was surrounded by better players than he was with at Southampton. And of course, he's maintained. He didn't get better a year in. He was instantly amazing and has just not looked back since. And I'm not suggesting that Yuri Tielemans is going to become the best midfielder in the world when he goes to Arsenal, but I'm using these individuals as cases and points where you suddenly get surrounded by better players. And I do think that Arsenal have overall better players than Leicester. I really do. Across most positions, they do. And he'll be a better player for it. Plus, you're not just buying Yuri Tielemans this year. You're looking at multiple football players that are going to improve it. Zinchenko, you've mentioned. Gabriel Jesus, you've mentioned already. You put those two and another one, plus Yuri Tielemans, into a team that has a year older Martinelli, a year older Saka, a year more experienced Odegaard. You know, William Saliba coming back, he'll be elevated by that. And that's the element of those data points that doesn't make sense because you're judging Yuri Tielemans in a different team and you're not taking into account all the changes that are going to come into play. Honestly, it's nonsensical. It really is. If someone here says, Terry, who are these Arsenal fans that don't rate Xhaka? They must just be doing it for content. Rate Xhaka more than Yuri Tielemans. Mate, half these people ain't content creators. They're fouled content creators that nobody ever watches. That's the maddest bit about it. That's why generally they get angry at like successful content creators. Because why does no one want to listen to me? Because you're boring and you chat shit, bro. Like that's generally the reason why. But there we go.